Tangent is y over x, cotangent's x over y. It's important to remember these friendships, these relationships, these soulmate ships, if you will, because if cosine is negative, so is secant. If cosine's positive, so is secant. They're the reciprocal of one another. They're sharing the same sign. There's a lot in common. All right. So the right triangle approach to trigonometry says, hey, screw the unit circle. Let's look at triangles. And I do quite like some triangles. So here is a triangle. And here is not just a triangle. This is a right triangle. And this is an angle theta. We then look at the three different sides of that right triangle and we give them names. The first part, if you look directly across the triangle, you find the opposite side of the triangle. So the opposite side is always across the triangle from whatever angle you're looking at. And we call that the opposite side. The side that is directly next to the angle, we call the adjacent side. And then the hypotenuse is the hypotenuse. It's nothing new. It's what it's always been. Now, I want to point out something important here. And it's that if I took this triangle, and maybe I'll make them like a tiny bit smaller and just put them up here. If I were instead looking at, let's say, this angle, so up in the corner, this angle here instead of this angle here, things are going to look a tiny bit different. The hypotenuse is still the hypotenuse. So this guy right here, this is still the hypotenuse. However, the side that's directly across the triangle, the opposite side, is down here now. This becomes the opposite side. And the side directly next to the angle, that's the adjacent side. So looking between these two triangles, which are identically the same, right? I just drew the same triangle. Opposite and adjacent sides, the way we define them are different depending on which angle you look at. The hypotenuse is always the hypotenuse, but depending on if you're looking at one of this angle down here or this angle here, you'll have different opposite and adjacent sides. So what we do is we take a right triangle, we take the side lengths of a right triangle, which we've now given names. So we know all three of them are different. We have names for each of them. And then we make ratios, which are just fractions. So for instance, cosine is adjacent, the adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse, the hypotenuse. And thusly, secant is just this guy rearranged, right? We're going to take this part, move him away, take the hypotenuse, move it up top, adjacent down below, swippity swap, just like that. Swippity swap, because they're soulmates. Sine is defined as the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. And thusly cosecant. Oh no, I lost his little eye. There we go. Cosecant, the soulmate of sine, is hypotenuse over opposite. A swapsy swap, if you will. And finally, tangent is defined as opposite side, the length of the opposite side over the adjacent side. And for cotangent, this will not be a surprise. It is adjacent over opposite. Just the swapsy swap. So in the same way that we defined these trig functions using the coordinates on the unit circle, we can also define those same trig functions and get the same values using this math right here. And in fact, when we were doing section 1.2, where is 1.2? 1.2, we used triangles, right? We used triangles to find those coordinate points in the first place. So trig is all about triangles. All right, so what we're going to do right here, we're going to find all 6 trig functions for both angle x and angle y. So I'm going to look at angle x first. For angle x. And for angle x, the opposite side is 8. The adjacent side, the side right next to it, is 15. ADJ for adjacent. And the hypotenuse is the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is 17. Now, you might want to say, Professor Cook, how in the world am I supposed to memorize all of the things you just told me I had to memorize? And I get it. It might look a tiny bit overwhelming. So I have great news. And the great news is that there are tricks. Let me just write the word adjacent there. There are tricks. And the trick is thus. The trick is SOH-CAH-TOA. I'll be saying this so much. You'll be saying it so much. Everybody's going to be saying SOH-CAH-TOA. It's going to be the theme of your semester. Buckle up, because we're saying SOH-CAH-TOA a whole heck of a lot. SOH-CAH-TOA, that gives you this main cast over here. This main cast of characters, it explains how those ratios work in a right triangle. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And I can even color code these the same way that I did before. So opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine, CA, is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent for TOA is opposite over adjacent. So SOH-CAH-TOA. It's the easiest way to memorize these ratios. All right. So for angle x, sine of angle x. Let's see, am I going to have enough room here? I really should put more room. Let's just make that a little smaller. Boom. I love doing things on an iPad, guys. If you haven't bought an iPad for yourself, I highly suggest it. The year is currently 2024, and I am using my iPad from COVID that I bought in 2020. Works wonderful, and it's so easy to take notes on. Apple gives me zero money for saying that. I just feel very passionately. All right, so sine of angle x, that's opposite over hypotenuse. So our opposite side is 8. Our hypotenuse is 17. So sine of x, angle x, is 8 over 17. Cosine of angle x, that's adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent over hypotenuse. Our adjacent side is 15. And our hypotenuse is 17. So cosine of angle x is 15 divided by 17. Tangent of angle x is opposite over adjacent. Our opposite side is 8. Our adjacent side is 15. Okay, so I always write it like this: sine, cosine, tangent, or cosine, sine, tangent. Either way, I always write the main cast on the left side, and then I immediately go and I do their soulmates. So first of all, the easiest one to know is tangent and cotangent are soulmates. It just makes sense. Tangent and cotangent are soulmates. So I'm just going to reverse that fraction. So instead of 8 over 15, I'm going to do 15 over 8. Just flippity flopping the fraction. Remembering sine and cosine, they're soulmates. It's just a matter of, for me, matching the S's and C's. So cosine starts with a C. His soulmate is secant, which starts with an S, a C and an S. C and an S. They match together. They are soulmates. That sine starts with S. Cosecant starts with C. They match up. So none of the soulmate ships have the same first letter. That's another one. But I know this one for me is an easy one to memorize. And then it's just a matter of sorting out the remaining four, which isn't that bad. I also just have this nice habit of always calling math objects he. And you're just going to notice that everything is a he to me. Cosine. His soulmate is secant. One day I'm gonna mix it up and do something different, but not today. All right, so sine soulmate is cosecant. So if sine of angle x was 8/17, then cosecant of angle x is 17/8. And finally, cosine, his soulmate is secant. And the reciprocal of 15 divided by 17 is 17 divided by 15. Right, and there they are. Those are for angle x. And I might just make them a teeny bit smaller. Of course, okay. Just a tiny bit smaller there. All right. Now let's go in for the other angle, angle y. So angle y is right here. Let's give angle y the color purple. Purple. I need to pick a lighter purple. That purple is so... That's a little better. Okay. Got to lean over my screen over here and make sure that looks good. That looks good enough. All right. So we have angle y. Hypotenuse is still the hypotenuse. So 17 is the hypotenuse. Let me write for angle y. The hypotenuse, still 17. However, much like we talked about before, the adjacent side switches. So the side that's right next to angle y is what we had over here, 8. But it's not the opposite side, it's the adjacent side because it's based on the location of the angle you're talking about. And then the side opposite the triangle, opposite, which is 15, is up here. So for angle y, the opposite side is 15 and the adjacent side is 8. And this is always going to happen in these triangles. So if you always are going to have 3 angles, but the right angle we never talk about. So we have these 2 angles down here at the bottom of the legs of the right triangle. And it will always turn out that if you look at one angle, you'll get this ratio, you'll get these guys, right? And then if you look at the other angle, the hypotenuse will be the same, but these will be flipped. Opposite and adjacent will be flipped from the other angles. So let's see what that does for us. So we're talking about angle y now. So sine of angle y, that's opposite 15. So right, so opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite is 15 divided by the hypotenuse, which is 17. We'll do the soulmate, which is cosecant. So cosecant of angle y is just the reciprocal. 17 divided by 15. Cosine of angle y, that's going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. So 8 divided by 17. Cosine soulmate partner in life is secant. So secant of angle y is the reciprocal of cosine, 17 divided by 8. Tangent of angle y is opposite over adjacent, TOA, opposite over adjacent. So our opposite side is 15. Our adjacent side is 8. 15 divided by 8. And cotangent, the soulmate of tangent, is equal to 8 divided by 15. Boom. And there it is. So again, all just depends on what angle you're talking about. All right, just like a fun, quick, abstract one. This one really, it's not hard. It's just kind of fun and abstract. So we have a triangle here, and we have some just very vague names for these side lengths. We have D, E, and F, and we have angle X up here. And it's a right triangle. We can make trig values on it. So for angle X, the across the triangle, the opposite is equal to F. Now, I'll move that up here. Opposite is F. The side adjacent to angle X, so right next to it, is D. So adjacent is D. Line them up. And then the hypotenuse is always the hypotenuse across the triangle from the right angle. Hypotenuse is E. Let me write adjacent right there. And let me just do a teeny tiny bit of highlighting. This is our adjacent side. It's right next to angle X. This is the hypotenuse because it's directly across the triangle from the right angle. And we have our opposite side across the triangle from the angle we're looking at. All right, so to find these, it's going to be super easy, guys. So here we go, sine of angle X. That is opposite, right? We have SOH-CAH-TOA, SOH-CAH-TOA. That is opposite over hypotenuse. The opposite side is F, and the hypotenuse is E. So this part's the opposite over hypotenuse part. That's not really the answer. The answer is sine of angle X is F over E. And the soulmate, cosecant of angle X, is the reciprocal, E divided by F. Cosine of angle X, that's adjacent, which is D. Adjacent, so it's adjacent over hypotenuse, opposite over hypotenuse. Last one will be opposite over adjacent for TOA. So cosine, adjacent side is D, hypotenuse is E. So cosine of angle X is D over E. Soulmate is secant. Secant of angle X is the reciprocal of cosine. So E over D. Finally, tangent, we have tangent of angle X. This is equal to the opposite side F divided by the adjacent side, which is D. And cotangent, the soulmate, reciprocal is D divided by F. Boom. I guess don't quite need those in the answer. Boom, there it is. So easy as 1, 2, 3. All right, so that's the setup for how trig is defined using a right triangle. And we're going to go further into it in the future sections. So I look forward to seeing you in another video. Bye.